India's most valuable startup, last publicly valued at $22 billion, had seen its losses balloon 20x to over 4,500 crore rupees for the financial year ending March 2021. A lot of questions were raised about why its losses are ballooning like this. Byju has recently said it will be letting go of nearly 5% of its 50,000 strong workforce. We're talking about nearly 2,500 employees of Byju being laid off. This is over and above the 600 to 700 odd employees that were laid off by Byju earlier in the year. It's not just Byju alone. Others, from an academy to a lead to a Vedantu, many Edtech startups have been laying off employees. While a question about whether the best for Edtech is behind us, the other big question is, what happens to all of these employees that have been laid off? What are the possible staffing solutions? And it's not Edtech alone. We have seen job losses and massive layoffs across the startup ecosystem. That and more is exactly what I'm going to be discussing with Rituparna Chakraborty, the co-founder at Teamlease Services, who's now joining us here on today's edition of Startup Central. Thank you so much. On one end, we're of course talking about it's the first normal Diwali in nearly 3 years. It's a big bang celebration, but the other end, this is the sad news and the reality on ground. Many who had pinned their hopes on startups with their jobs are now out of work. Can you give us a sense, first up, on ground, with thousands and thousands of employees being laid off across the country, what exactly is going on?
Thanks so much. Good to be on the show. So yes, I think we did have a couple of months back a phase where there were some startups who kind of laid off some resources. To be honest, and to be fair to the startup community, it was not something which happened across any and every startups. I think quite a few of the startups probably have been reminded by their investors that finally bottom line performance catches up, and hence prudence in terms of how allocation of capital and resources are happening is important. There was also a visible move towards improving productivity, all of which actually resulted in a few layoffs. Interestingly, and I think I have said that even at that time, most of these talent which were laid off did find themselves alternate options within weeks of them getting laid off. And the reason for that is that while there is a certain cross-section of organizations who probably were laying off, there was a simultaneous demand that were getting created as the country and the economy were kind of, leaving behind the woes of the pandemic. So there is a clear shift, and if you see all the economic indicators, there are positives clearly visible. Domestic consumption has gone up, consumer behavior has gone up. And because of that, while there is some agony that has happened, that has not really impacted these youth and these kids for a very long time. Now, yes, there is an emergence that has happened today on account of the news that you just cited. I do believe that there is more variety and there is more diversity in terms of employment options for today's youth. If you have on-ground skills, and whether it's in the function of sales, human resource, technology, financial management, there are alternate options. It may not be in the same sector that you're looking at, but we are seeing options emerging. And it's not just about a kind of employment. I mean, there is on-roll employment, there is freelancing that's happening, there is a lot of gig work happening, people are taking consulting assignments and projects. So the good thing is that we are living in an economy, Nayantara, where there are multiple options floating around, and there is acceptance and openness on both sides to kind of avail of that. That in a snapshot is what we are witnessing. There is always going to be a phase of agony for those who get laid off, but I see signs, clear signs in the economy and the ecosystem where they may not be in that position for very long. So their ability to bounce back and look at alternate options exists on ground.
That's fantastic news. The pain has been there, agony has been there, but it's not been very long-lived, and talent laid off has found options within weeks. Rituparna, kind of preempted my next question. I'd like to go into more detail. You said last time round, that's what we saw. This time round, when we're seeing the layoffs, what would your advice be to all of this talent? You've touched upon it briefly, but if I could ask you very pointedly.
Yes. I think first and foremost, what is required is don't ever get into a slump of depression and negativity just because you're laid off. Unlike how India was 10 years back, once you were laid off, it was not really so easy for us to get an alternative options. Thanks to the proliferation of the internet, thanks to improvement in access, the fact that now individuals have direct access to organizations that they like to work with, I think the options in the scenario is not as gloomy or as restricted it used to be. So I think first and foremost, approach it with an open mind. It's a hard hand that you're being dealt with, but that doesn't mean that it defines the future. India is standing out amongst a lot of growing economies, even amongst developed economies, as a place which has been more resilient relative to many countries in spite of the recessionary headwinds or the inflationary trends. And hence, one should remain optimistic and one should get a lot more targeted. Like if your skills are substitutable skills and they are fungible in nature, so do not limit yourself to your comfort zone. Look at other sectors, similar functions, maybe where you could probably showcase your skills. Be very articulate with the specific skills that you have, and that makes sense and is very easy in today's world to reach out to the relevant talent acquisition managers, recruitment managers. Everybody seems to be available on LinkedIn. So make use of all these properties and all these options and channels and make yourself available out there without putting excessive limitations. One should also be very, very open in terms of compensation, because we have seen that in recent times, thanks to some of the startups, thanks to some of the things that have happened even in the Edtech sectors, there has been a little bit of irrationality, maybe in terms of compensation and benefits. What's important is to get back into the job market, because staying away too long from the job market never augurs well. So please be a lot more open, a lot more flexible. And if you have some leftover time and if there is a time gap before you pick up your next assignment, do not hesitate to kind of look at alternative skilling and upskilling options. I think the world has changed it so dramatically that anything that you want to study or build additional muscles on, it's pretty much accessible and it's very much affordable. So I think these are some of the options. And then there are, of course, fixed term contracts, there are consultancy projects, there are apprenticeships, there are gig works. I think there's a lot of options available, and one should just keep yourself informed and aware and keep accessing. Not even for a minute one should waste time sulking about what has happened.
So don't waste a second, bounce back. Things are not where they were 10 years ago. Redundancy is always not the fault of the employees. There's a larger environment at play over here. Rituparna, I'd like to get one point that you made a little more specifically, because those who are tuning in. When you say substitutable skill sets, fungible skill sets, can you explain that a little more? What does that mean? Can you maybe highlight it with some examples?
Yes, I mean, if somebody is deeply analytical, for example, now that skill need not necessarily be relevant to one company. It's a skill set that can be used across different companies. If you're very good in sales, for example, you have articulation skills. If you are creative, for example, I think these are skills which are very fungible in nature. Even non-cognitive skills like the ability to manage a task, project management, teamwork, team management. I think these are very fungible skill sets, and hence one should actually look beyond what they are used to doing and comfortable doing and lay more emphasis on them while looking for alternate options. Some people are very good with numbers, some people are very good with talking to people, some people are very comfortable being in outbound jobs, some people like desk jobs, some people are very good in interacting with customers. These are all fungible skill sets. You don't really need to be hooked on to a particular sector or domain to make use of them, because these are life skills or these are non-cognitive skills which help you remain relevant always. So one should be aware of it. I think one of my biggest worries is that we lay so much emphasis on our technical skill sets, qualifications, something that we are used to doing, that we forget that we do possess some fungible skills, and one should tap into them when there is a moment of crisis.
The other point, Rituparna, you said is that don't let only compensation drive you. Many will say it's easy for someone to say who has money. They need to be driven by compensation. They may have loans, they may have medical bills, school bills, tuition fees. The list goes on and on and on. In such a scenario, what should one do? Take the first job offer, be a little patient, have a time limit maybe that, okay, I'll keep hunting, keep something in the bag.
Yeah, I think what you said, I totally understand. When you are drawing a certain compensation, your entire lifestyle works around it, and and hence making a readjustment in that lifestyle is difficult. But whether it's good time or bad times, the advice that everyone gets, and I'm hoping people are paying attention to it, is that always save for difficult times. So, which means essentially every individual, I'm hoping, has some disposable income. Now, all I'm saying is that disposable income, which probably were diverting towards your savings, if you can compromise on your compensation to that extent to begin to have a foot in the door to get back into the work market, one could start with that. And if one is not satisfied with it as a long-term scenario, why not take up a specific gig work, a specific project, which is hourly probably, which gives you the flexibility of looking at 3-4 gigs to be able to compensate and make do the kind of money that you were doing in the past. It's a difficult scenario. I mean, the ideal scenario would be that the moment you drop out from one job, you get another one, but in reality, it doesn't happen. So one has to, that's the flexibility and openness that I'm talking about. And now we live in a world where it's very much doable. It's very much possible that you're actually, the much talked about word has been moonlighting. The only aspect of moonlighting I'd like to talk about is moonlighting with complete disclosure. So you can pick up 2-3 assignments with complete disclosure using your fungible skills in non-competing environment and maximize your gains as well. Yes, again, I know it's easier said than done, but what's the option, to be honest? A gig is better than no job.
I like that. Moonlighting, well, it is the sign of the times that we are in. It's better to do it with full disclosures. Now, Rituparna, the other thing, since 2020, and maybe it was because, we saw the kind of funding that we saw in startups in 2020 and 2021, startups are burning money. They were promising, lavish salaries, all kind of gadgets, pet insurance, super bikes, all of that. They were throwing them at employees. Now, having said that, the lessons that have been learned, that, at some point the party will come to an end, which is exactly what we're seeing going forward. Are we seeing, a situation where if a youngster has a job offer from a company in the old economy and a startup, they're preferring to be safe and go with the old economy?
First and foremost, the point that you said, lessons have been learned. I'm not too sure, to be honest, because it's a cycle. We've seen this go on. There is always a surge of startups. There is a lot of excitement, this irrational behaviors. I personally have seen it over 2 decades that something like this happens. There's a new trend, there's a new idea, the new ecosystem, all these swifts and benefits, fresh money in hand happens, and then there is a realization cycle which follows, and when you will see a recourse or reversal of fortunes. But then I'm not too sure that that memory will last. The moment funds will come back, you will again see a fight for talent. You will again see that some of these irrational benefits and slips will come up. But it's now going to be completely the discretion of individuals, to be honest. Some individuals I know that who are saying that I'm young, I want to learn, I'm going to take this risk. And hence, even if there is a fallout, I mean, first and foremost, with startups, there is no guarantee. I mean, we know that the mortality rate of startups are what it is. But then they are the ones who are driving innovation. They are the ones who are actually ending up creating some good quality jobs and giving learning experience. So it's an individual's appetite. All I'm asking is that people should walk into it with open eyes. Unfortunately, the drama that happens later on when some of the startups fail or they start, it almost seems to me as if somebody had coaxed or coerced them into some employment contract which they were not aware of, or they were signing up without knowing that startups have a upside as well as a downside. So if somebody is risk averse, then they might want to make choices which are safer, may not be high yielding, may not give them that kind of learning experience that they're seeking, but so be it. But I think the only lesson to be learned is that whatever choice you're making, first and foremost, take self-accountability for it. And please walk in to any of your options with open eyes and with complete awareness.
Lessons there for all of you. Thank you so much, Rituparna, for taking the time out and for joining us here. You know, there's, of course, a lot of agony, a lot of pain, but after talking to you, there seems to be, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that light will be seen much before than many of us think.
Yes, thank you.